welcome back. For today's video, I enjoyed so much sharing with everyone a few of the precious books from my childhood, so I thought I would return today with another very special book. I've had this book since I was probably about 5 years old, so it's been with me. I'm now 37, so it's been with me quite a while. Treasury of Fairy Tales. Let's open it up and see which story we want to read. Contents. We have Sleeping Beauty, the Griffin, Prince Charming, the Little Match Girl, the Little Myrtle Fairy, the Water of Life, Thumbelina, the Little Mermaid, the Tree with the Golden Leaves, the Musicians of Bremen, Tom Thumb, the Beautiful Dove, Little Brother and Little Sister, the Goose Girl, the Fairies, the Underground Prison, the Garden of Paradise. Let's go with one of my old favorites, shall we? The Little Mermaid, page 83. The Little Mermaid by Hans Christian Andersen. As you can probably tell, this book is well loved. Deep under the seas, far, far deeper than any diver has ever been, is the beautiful pearl and coral domain of the King of all the seas. His great palace of shining white marble stands on a bed of the finest white sand, and through tall crystal windows you can see rich bunches of sea anemones and chandeliers made of roped pearls. Here, in this watery kingdom, lives the powerful monarch who reigns over the faithful, though sometimes unruly, population of tritons and mermaids. His subjects are half human and half fish. Like fishes, they have long, supple, and wavy tails. Like men, they have heads and shoulders and arms. The tritons blow into conches in the deep sea grottos and communicate with them that way. And the mermaids have the prettiest and most captivating of voices. The songs that they sometimes sing above the surface of the waves enchant the sailors who hear them. Many sailors have even lost their lives trying to follow these enchanting singers and their haunting songs down to the bottom of the ocean. But under the reign of good King Neptune, It was forbidden for the mermaids to ensnare unsuspecting sailors this way. However, the king, who had 6 daughters, did allow them, when they reached their 15th birthday, to swim up to the surface of the water, to play in the foam of the waves, and to follow the ships from a distance as far as the coast where men lived. The first mermaid to reach the age of 15 came back to the underwater palace and declared, "The sun is like a big yellow flower and it burns. It makes the foam on the waves quite warm." But I prefer the coolness and the seaweed of my father's kingdom. It's so much more fun to slip in and out of the coral and play hide and seek with the starfish. I swam up to the big rocky beaches, reported the second, on her return a year later. I saw hundreds of little black and white things there, sliding and playing and diving, and bringing back fish to their babies. It must have been a colony of fishermen. The little princess's grandmother, who had brought them up herself after their mother had died, giving birth to the youngest, exclaimed impatiently, "Of course not, you silly girl. I've told you at least 100 times about the penguins who live in the cold coasts." And she straightened her crown of pearl oysters with a sigh. "The education of mermaid princesses really is a thankless task," she muttered. "Everything goes in one ear and out the other." When her turn came, the third sister surfaced amid the glistening icebergs of Greenland. She had a wonderful time playing with the polar bear cubs and the little seals in the icy waves by the shore. The fourth sister followed the course of the great sailing ships and watched with fascination how the nimble sailors swarmed up and down the tall masts. When the fifth returned to the underwater palace, she described the violent storm that she had witnessed with terror and amazement. The waves sweeping over onto the land, the thunder and lightning, the storm-tossed boats. The youngest sister, poor thing, shook her long blonde hair and fairly languished away with the waiting. The months seemed to stretch on and on forever, and even her favorite pet fishes, try as they might, could not bring a smile to light up her pretty little face. Her grandmother scolded her. "Your life is here with us, child. Stop dreaming about land. Men are such ugly creatures, planted on 2 thick columns that they call legs, and on which they waddle about like ducks." But the little mermaid didn't believe a word of it, and sighed all the more sadly as she braided chains of seaweed. Finally, her long-awaited 15th birthday arrived. When the birthday feast was over, the excited little mermaid kissed her father the king and her grandmother, and followed at a distance by her sisters, she shot up to the surface like an arrow. She watched the setting sun with admiration and delight, and then, as the sky darkened, she saw a magnificent ship approaching, all lit up with its sails unfurled. As the little mermaid swam, full of wonder, toward the ship, the first flashes of lightning across the black sky warned of a terrible storm. On board, the music stopped, and soon the crash of thunder was all that could be heard. The sailors were running back and forth across the dangerously sloping bridge. But in spite of their desperate efforts, the ship was engulfed by a mountainous wave. Debris of all sorts, planks, sails, and rigging floated all around the helpless little mermaid. When she saw the motionless body of a handsome young man floating on the waves, he had a gash in his forehead, but seemed to be still breathing. The little mermaid summoned all her strength, and holding his head out of the water, she pulled him toward the beach. She hid behind a rock and called softly for help. They waited this way for a long time, and the little mermaid worried that without help, the poor sailor might die. Finally, a group of girls came out of a nearby church, and catching sight of the drowned man, ran down to the beach. One of them, the prettiest one, pulled a silver flask from her skirt and put it to the poor man's lips. Seconds later, he slowly opened his eyes and looked at the girl, while in her hiding place, the little mermaid breathed a sigh of relief before diving back into the waves. But she soon realized sadly that she could not forget the handsome sailor. The seasons passed, and her sadness grew deeper. Time and time again, she returned to the beach, full of hope, but it was in vain. After much hesitation, her grandmother, seeing her so unhappy, said, "Child, if you can only find happiness on land, then go and see the great witch of the deep. She alone can help you, but be careful. The price for her services is very high indeed, and the salt water of bitter tears is her favorite drink." But the poor little mermaid was so much in love that no sacrifice seemed too great for her. She wanted to find the man who had captured her heart, and no price was too high to pay. To do so, she had to assume human form and divest herself of the pretty fishtail, which now seemed hideous to her because it prevented her from finding her beloved on dry land. Braving huge eels and sharks, she dove toward the witch's lair. Swallowing her fear, she slipped through the tentacles of the giant octopus that guarded the dark grotto. Crouching by a cauldron, a repulsive old crone was stirring a foul-smelling concoction. "Well, well," cackled the old witch, "it looks as though the favorite daughter of the King of the Seas has need of my humble services. I'm delighted to see you, my dear, delighted. You see, I know what is tormenting you, and I know what you want, but it will cost you dearly. First, I shall take your voice, because I have always wanted to sing as prettily as you. So you will be mute forever. Second, as happy as I am to give you 2 lovely tapering legs, every step you take will cause you great pain, but you must hide it, even when your sweet little feet start bleeding." I don't care, cried the little mermaid. "I would gladly suffer 1,000 deaths for the sake of my beloved." "But that's not all," the horrible crone went on, licking her lips with pleasure. "If you do not become the bride of your handsome Prince Charming, you will die without ever becoming a mermaid again." Snatching up the cup of foul liquid that the witch handed to her, the mermaid drank it all in one gulp. As she swam away from the murky grotto, her tail became heavier and her movements awkward. Pain shot through her body. The little mermaid fainted onto the soft sand of the beach, just as her body assumed a wholly human appearance. "Beautiful stranger, wake up," said a voice. When the little mermaid opened her eyes, she saw the face of her beloved leaning over her. Unfortunately, she could not answer him, but her big blue eyes were so eloquent, so full of entreaty, that the young man carried the golden-haired stranger who had lost her voice back to the nearby palace. She captured the hearts of all who saw her, and balls and receptions were given in her honor. But the prince thought of her as a sister, as a dearly cherished friend. He confided in her that he was hopelessly in love with an unknown stranger. "She looks like you," he said sadly, stroking the little mermaid's hair. "I can just see her long golden hair and her blue eyes as she bent over me on the beach where I was washed up after the shipwreck. It was she who organized the rescue and alerted the palace, but then she disappeared, and ever since she has haunted my dreams. You know, sweet little sister with the lovely smile, if I had never seen her, I might have even married you. Poor little mermaid. She suffered 1,000 deaths with every step she took, and all she was offered in return was the role of a sister and confidant. But she still held on to one fervent hope. Perhaps he would never find the object of his desire. Alas, one fateful day, the prince visited a neighboring kingdom where he recognized one of the princesses as his golden-haired rescuer. He asked for her hand, and it was granted. The richly decorated royal flagship was to be the setting for the prince's wedding. On the bridge decorated with lights, all the nobles of the realm danced in joyous celebration. Among them, dressed in floating silks, the little mermaid leapt and spun and twirled with a broken heart. "Just look," said the prince to his new bride, "how happy my little adopted sister is for us." As night fell, the poor abandoned mermaid leaned over the rails of the deck. She knew that she would die soon because her beloved had spurned her. But she did not care, since life without love held no attraction for her. Suddenly voices called out from the waves beside the ship. "You can be saved, little sister. All 5 of us have sold our hair to the great witch of the deep. In return, she gave us this dagger. If you plunge it into the heart of the prince, you can come back to us. Your legs will join together to form a tail again as soon as his blood flows. Act quickly, or you will be turned into sea spray." As if in a dream, the little mermaid seized the weapon and slipped into the royal bedchamber. But when she saw her love gently sleeping, she flung the dagger away from her and tiptoed away on her poor bruised little feet. Then she heard a voice say, "Your loving heart has earned you a place among the fairies of the air. In 300 years you may return to the world. Sooner perhaps, because every good deed performed by a child will mean one day less that you have to wait." The little mermaid felt all her pain float away, and she flew with the wind, a fairy of the air. But one day, as long as children remember her, she will return to the marble palace under the sea. And that is just one of the stories in this beautiful book. If you'd like to hear more, leave me a comment down below, and please leave me a like and subscribe to the channel if you're enjoying my videos so that I can provide more. And thank you all so much for watching, and we'll see you next time. God bless and take care. Sweet dreams.